Simon Weibel and Kira Mark can be on stage. So the recording has started. It's up to you, please.
All right, today I'll be presenting. My name is David Kalbermatten, and our challenge, if you can go to the first slide, was finding a solution where we can navigate on a given route across Switzerland. So the whole issue was that the route itself is made up of thousands of points, and no of the commercial solutions that our challenge owner looked at were working out for this particular problem. So the goals were that you could have a navigation, and that the navigation itself was not voice-based, so you could hear like take a left turn in 200 meters, stuff like that, and that you could do it on the mobile, like on your phone, mobile devices. So if you can like go to the next slide. Our first solution that we found was actually, yeah, you can start the video, I'll just be talking over it. An app that already exists, it's called Osmand, which is pretty powerful because it allows you to do offline navigation. It is a working solution, works offline, it's free to use, and it works in both directions. As you can see, like the purple path on here, if you can pause the video for a moment. Well, too late. Basically, the path you saw there, like the red and purple path, is the app navigating around that route, and it works with voice navigation as well. The drawbacks of this solution are that the standalone application here is a bit feature packed, which is usually a good thing, but it makes it not as easy to use. And the UI is not very up to date. It looks outdated in some places, but it's workable. And that's a more technical thing, but it is licensed under GPL. So if you would want to like take the source code and make your own thing out of it, you'd have to open source it per definition of the licensing agreement. So our next solution that we were looking at was a Mapbox, in this case integrated into Flutter, a mobile framework. Advantages here are it's integratable, so you can make your own standalone app, like you could make your Grand Tour app and have the navigation be a part of it instead of a separate app. It has a big community because it's quite a popular SDK. And because it is managed by a company like that sells this SDK and the API access, it also has support. So if you have an issue with the SDK itself, you can contact the company and have them take a look at it, which is good. However, it has some drawbacks. One thing is, if you want to have this working on Android and iOS, you'll have to do the multi-platform aspect yourself, either by making a wrapper, so you can use solutions like React Native or Flutter, or by making 2 individual apps. Also, it has a waypoint limit of 25, so if you actually want to use this kind of approach for the finalized product, you'd have to use a workaround where the navigation would have to be restarted in the background, which we have some ideas on how to do that, but no concrete solution for that issue. And also it does cost, it costs about $5 per user per month, which can be quite expensive depending on how many people are using it. And it doesn't work offline because it uses their API for the routing. So yeah, here's another example with React Native. You can just play it. It looks a bit nicer because this has a more up-to-date version of the SDK running it. And here we'd have the approach of like loading in 25 waypoints, and by the end it would load in another 25. So it's just like go around in steps of 25 around the whole thing. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. It's impressive what you did in those some hours, and yeah, it's kind of a solution. my question is, what would be your suggestion? You now presented 3 options. What do you think is the closest to what we were looking for?
If it's just about having a tool that works and you can just, tell people how to use it, I'd probably go with Osmand, like Osmand, because the navigation part really does work well, and you can load in the entire route beforehand without having to do trickery in the background with loading in new tools. Also, what I forgot to mention, which is another big advantage, it allows you to navigate onto the route from anywhere, basically, because it does that pretty intelligently. So when you start, let's say, the whole thing goes around the whole Switzerland. So let's say you start in Eschenbach, which is like close by to Rapperswil. It will navigate you to the closest point on the route and then start routing you all the way around. And it works in both directions.
Ideal. So you actually solved both challenges. Congratulations. I'm really impressed because we were really working on it for years. So wow. Maybe Marcus, do you have another question?
Yes, if you think about a dedicated app specifically implemented for the Grand Tour, including other functionalities like the challenge number 5, the sites around me. So there are still 2 options remaining, the option Flutter or the option React Native. Which one of those tools would you recommend?
They are both very similar. Just to explain React Native, Flutter, they are both frameworks where the idea is you write your code for like the whole app, how it looks, how it works once, and you can deploy it on both Android and iOS without having to have 2 entirely separate apps. So it doesn't really matter which approach you decide on. The issue is if you want to go with Mapbox, the SDK itself, which provides the functionality of the navigation, is only available for either platform. So you have it on iOS and Android, but you don't have a version that is managed by the developers for React Native or Flutter. So if you were to use this approach, you'd have to write your own library to make it work with React and with Flutter, because the functionality itself is only working on it works on both platforms, but you'd have to make some kind of wrapper to put both into one, so you can then have one code base. But that's a technicality. The bigger issue is that there's a 25 waypoint limit, so you have to use some kind of workaround, which in the case of Osmand you would not have to. Another option might be to take Osmand, since it's open source, and try to make it into a Grand Tour version with stripped down functionality. But we didn't really have time to go into the nitty-gritty details of how you'd do that.
Okay, so these are very technical details.